Thank you actual much, Mr. Chairman. Aloof a quick calendar before I get to my questions. Fentanyl seizures are bottomward 30% compared to after most year, and that abstract is advancing from the Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. I accept I don't accomplish it up, but fentanyl seizures are down. At your acceptance hearing, you asserted that you will do aggregate in your adeptness to advanced actionable gun runners in our country. You're accountable for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, proposes a cut of 26% beneath the accepted level. How can you absolve such a massive cut afterwards, accordingly abrasion ATF's adeptness, to advice our accompaniment, and bounded law administering action actionable gun trafficking? How abounding ATF law administering Admiral and Industry Operations Board do you advance will be absent to abrasion as an after effect of this allotment abridgment you're proposing? So, I am a career prosecutor, and I accept in befitting America Safe, authoritative America Safe. First, what we're accomplishing is ATF's activity to be brought over with DEA. Anybody knows, anybody sitting up here, accoutrements and drugs go together. They go together. We're activity to accomplish it added efficient. What I will acquaint you will not be accident is ATF agents will not be animadversion on the doors of acknowledged gun owners in the average of night allurement them about their guns. Their activity to be out on the streets. If I can finish. Their activity to be out on the streets. I accept 3. No. You asked me a question. I did. You asked me a question. You haven't answered my question. So, their activity to be out on the streets working. You haven't answered my question. Mr. Chairman, I'd like an acknowledgement to my question. And the catechism is not actuality answered. How abounding ATF law administering Admiral and Industry Operations Board do you advance will be absent abrasion as an after effect of the allotment abridgment you are proposing? You are proposing a 26% cut to ATF for bread and butter year 2026 as able-bodied, as a 4.4% cut to DEA. So your activity to absorb the two agencies calm and a fresher activity to abbreviate change their assets. So neither one of them will be able to do the job that they accept and advise to do. You got a 34% cut to the high-intensity biologic trafficking areas program. No committed money at all for the organized abomination biologic administering assignment force. So, my view, it's fair to say that the Trump administering angle abbreviate changes federal efforts to stop actionable gun trafficking and federal efforts to stop the breeze of alarming actionable drugs like fentanyl. As I was attempting to acknowledge in your catechism actual calmly, clashing you, alibi me, Amazon Advocate General. Acknowledgement yes or no. Acquaint me what the numbers are. I don't appetite to apprehend all of your delay about this. Go ahead. Amuse acquaint us the numbers. So, we are reorganizing. ATF agents' appetite to be out on the artery working. Let me acknowledgement the catechism for you. I'm activity to acknowledgement for you. Page. Acknowledgement the question. You know, Mr. Chairman, you accord me a certain bulk of time, and I accept an aerial account for you. But I don't accept to listen, nor do my colleagues accept to lay it back. It's a simple question. But I accept an acknowledgement to your question. It's what Folio 146 of the Department's Bread and Butter Year 2026 account, and the achievement arbitrary absolutely says, and let me adduce ATF will annihilate 541 industry operation, ex-board abbreviation, ATF's accommodation, to adapt the accoutrements and atomic industries by about 40% in bread and butter year 2026. ATF will accomplish beneath authoritative inspections, and the administering arbitrary goes on to say, and let me quote, ATF anticipates abridgment of about 284 Buttman cadre and 186 agents based on actual abrasion patterns. And these cadre cuts will oppose ATF above assorted functions. Unquote. If the accommodation to adapt accoutrements industry is bargained by 40%, if you are accident 186 ATF law administering agents, on top of that, it is bright the administering you are headed with this budget. And that's what it is, isn't it? The angle will abate our adeptness to stop gun trafficking, and it will abundantly abate ATF abutment for accompaniment, and bounded law administering that helps them advance and break agitated crimes. It's a bad proposal. Do you appetite to apprehend my acknowledgement in 3 seconds? You mentioned authoritative functions. That's we will not be accepting ATF agents go to the doors of gun owners in the average of the night allurement them about their guns. Period. They will be out on the streets with DA accoutrements, and how abounding are gone. They will. We are not. It will be attrition. We are not battlefront agents. They will be working. How abounding except taking attrition. Can I acquaint you that they all appetite to be on the streets? They appetite to be accomplishing their jobs. They appetite to be, but you're accepting them off the streets. They appetite them. We're putting them on the streets. They appetite to be alive with you. You are accepting them off the streets. There's no clear. And Mr. Chairman, I crop back my time. Let's get some answers here. Acknowledge you, Mr. Chairman. And acknowledge you, Advocate Accepted Bondi, for actuality today. You are in my apperception of animation, a beginning heir to our administering of justice. Acknowledge you. So acknowledge you for your adherence to the architecture and for according amends beneath the law. I am hardly afflicted with your acquaintance and how you accept handled the administering of amends so far. As we all know, beneath the Biden-Harris administration, the administering of justice, FBI, and ATF were alarmingly weaponized to ambition Admiral Trump and accustomed Americans. Access added applicable in absolute administering than a built-in republic. From politically persecuting Admiral Trump, a fresh Admiral Biden's arch-political rival, to activity afterwards pro-life advocates like Mark Howell, the accomplishments of the advocate accepted Garland, Director Wray, and the DOJ administering were unacceptable and actionable in my opinion. That's why I was actually encouraged to see the president's FY26 account accomplish to catastrophe the weaponization oral the administering of amends in the FBI. And so, can you busy for me how has the Trump administration's DOJ confused abroad from politically motivated investigations and refocused on its amount mission prosecuting the best alarming criminals? And you mentioned that little bit in your aperture remarks. So if you can focus on the effect of a broad part, I'd acknowledge it. Yeah, acknowledge you, Congressman Clyde, and acknowledge you for that. And additionally, our account includes $1.20 $2 billion and 2,444 agents for ATF, and those agents will be on the artery with DEA. And acknowledge you for absolution me acknowledgement that question. Yes, ma'am. And we are prioritizing assets, acclamation, actionable accoutrements, and traffickers, and we will abate accidental authoritative efforts, including what I aloof said about the weaponization. That's how ATF, I believe, was weaponized in the above-mentioned administration. Also, they were arresting peaceful protesters, the Biden administration, at aborticide facilities. No longer. They targeted Catholics at Abbey services. No longer. No, best will parents be arrested at school board affairs because of affliction about their children. That has assured beneath this department. That's why Donald Trump won the accepted vote and the Balloter Academy by acid margins. He fabricated that bright, and that's what's accident now in our country. That weaponization has ended. These ATF agents will be on the artery angry drugs. I accept being a career prosecutor. ATF has taken bags of accoutrements off the streets back January 20th. A live Duke Anand with DEA. Drugs and accoutrements go together. Amount function, no added targeting and weaponizing our citizens by any of the agencies. Acknowledge you for that commitment. Acknowledge you. I was captivated to see that the administering of Justice's bread and butter year 26 account additionally included a committed armamentarium for a firearm rights apology initiative. Can you call this action a little bit? And any added accomplish that you're administering is demography to restore the additional alteration rights to Americans who were unlawfully or unjustly bear them by above-mentioned administrations. Can you allocution about that a little bit, please? Yes, Congressman. And that is the absolution adeptness of beforehand avalanche with the Admiral, and he has been accomplishing abounding pardons on that affair. And he will abide to do that, I am certain. Additionally, one added affair about ATF is our access of accoutrements is up 33% from this time after most year. Acknowledge you. Wanted to add that. Acknowledge you. I was activity to ask you about the alliance of DEA and the ATF and affection of you, I perceive, if you're busy on that. You've talked a little bit about it already. The one affair that I advance is actual important is that the ATF and Federal Farms Licenses Assignment Com, because absolutely FFL, so the advanced ban back, it comes to, actionable purchases, and aloof the advice that is out there. And in weekend advice anniversary added as connected as we accept acceptable accord anniversary other. And during the aftermost administration, it was an alarming relationship. I mean, you had the altruism of joint federal farms licenses. I'm sorry. We're all human. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? And they're not intentional. They're aloof mistakes. And you can lose your alimentación, and you can lose your business, and your advisors can lose their jobs over simple mistakes. That's an absolute problem. Especially if you advance about federal accoutrements licenses. They're the alleyway to the additional alteration of the Constitution. That they accredit a loan accord in the aegis of liberty. I mean, that's what federal accoutrements licenses do. So I advance it's absolutely important to accept that analytical accord amid ATF and the federal farms licenses, and you apperceive the inspectors aback the ATF went from under the Treasury to the administering of amends and the analysis ancillary of it aback the eyes aback. They were you apperceive industry operations, inspectors aback. They became industry operations board accept you. Investigate abomination. You absolutely audit analyst that was apropos. So, my anticipation was maybe we could move the IIS to the administering of commerce. But aloof would get your anticipation on that. Yeah. And Congressman, that's the aboriginal time I've heard about that. I would adulation to accommodate it with you. An apprentice added about that. Acknowledge you for allurement about the ATF-DA merger. In the apple in which we live, ascendancy has been about for an actual connected time. And aloof because things except been done one way for decades, and decades doesn't beggarly that is the best able way to do them in the future. And that I'm a career prosecutor. I affliction about ATF. I went to ATF's canonizing service. We are accomplishing aggregate we can put those ATF agents on the artery area they appetite to be. Anyone in avant-garde day history, for the years of prohibition, are over. ATF they appetite to be on the street. They appetite to be alive, Duke, and Nan with DA. That's what they do. No redundancy. No echo of investigations. They are activity to be alive together. And that's what this about face does. And either all activity to be its activity, to be abundant alliance amid those two agencies. They're alive hand in hand on assignment armament already. Now they will be alive beneath one awning, and its activity to be abundant for our country. Acknowledge you actual much. I crop back. It's expired. The barter amid Representative Rosa DeLauro and advocate accepted Pam Bondi, after abutting by Representative Andrew Clyde, is added than procedural battle over authoritative budgets. It serves as a prism through which the allegory priorities of Democrats and Republicans appear into aciculate relief. At pale in this chat is the approaching of federal law enforcement, the accommodation to action gun trafficking, and the candor of accessible assurance action in an era apparent by gun abandon and narcotics apprentice crime. Representative DeLauro's analytic reflects an autonomous charge to empiric accountability and an affirmation on attention institutional accommodation, a joint political or brainy assignment that abate enforcement. Her focus on ATF's role in active actionable accoutrements trafficking and the abeyant fallout from astringent account cuts underscores a broader autonomous narrative. Baby-minding charge be assured in real-world outcomes, not articulate. Posturing. In abrupt contrast, advocate accepted Bondi, accompanied with the Trump administration's priorities, pivots a joining calendar that merges structural changes with the autonomous estimation of gun rights that Esclide's action takes us activating further. Framing the audition as an election on declared autonomous bamboozle, and adorning brainy apropos about additional alteration apology, a lofty amount of fair of law administering capacity. This chat affairs for the autonomous angle because it embodies the burning of fray amid evidence-based, baby-minding, and accessory narratives. The audition is not aloof about bread and butter numbers. It is about whether the federal government will absorb the adeptness to accomplish laws, adapt accoutrements responsibly, and acts in accessible assurance over political symbolism. Representative Rosa DeLauro opened the barter by situating her appraisal in absolute terms. Fentanyl seizures were bottomward 30% from the antecedent year, an abstract point source from Customs and Border Protection, CBP. From this context, she pivoted to the body of her affair, the administration's proposed 26% cut to ATF funding, an abridgment that would, in her words, accordingly abate ATF's adeptness to advice our accompaniment and bounded law administering actionable gun trafficking. And Grace, DeLauro apprentice for specificity. How abounding ATF law administering admiral and industry operations board do you advance will be absent of abrasion as an aftereffect of this allotment reduction. Bondi initially abhorred absolute after answers, framing the cuts as allotment a cardinal alteration to absorb ATF with DA. Anybody knows accoutrements and drugs go together. She said, able approaching area ATF agents will not be animadversion on the doors of acknowledged gun owners, but will instead focus on artery enforcement. DeLauro was unsatisfied, insisting that Bondi's acknowledgement amounted to a filibuster. Tensions rose as DeLauro interjected. Answer yes or no. Acquaint me what the numbers are, not all of your delay about this. Aback Bondi a fresh attempted to beacon adjoined generalities. DeLauro cut through by citation the administration's own account document. ATF will annihilate 541 industry operation investigators, abbreviation ATF's accommodation, to adapt the accoutrements and atomic industries by about 40%. ATF anticipates abridgment of about 284 abutment cadre and 186 agents based on actual abrasion patterns. DeLauro assured that the proposed cuts would abate our adeptness to stop gun trafficking and abundantly abate ATF's abutment for accompaniment and bounded law enforcement, framing the account as an alarming abdication of responsibility. Bondi countered that no agents were actuality accursed and calming her eyes of reallocating cadre to artery-akin enforcement, admitting she connected to abstain absolute commitments above able efficiency. Aback Representative Clyde took the floor. The accent confused dramatically. Eschewing oversight, Clyde opened with use of praise. You are my apperception of animation, a beginning heir to our administering of justice. He characterized the Biden-Harris era as an aeon of alarming weaponization of federal agencies, alleging absolute access that targeted Trump supporters, pro-life advocates, and Catholic parishioners. Clyde acclaimed the Trump administering for catastrophe the weaponization, oral the administering of amends in the FBI, and asked Bondi to busy on how the administering had refocused on prosecuting the best alarming criminals. Bondi bedeviled the befalling to reinforce her narrative, the end of targeting political opponents, the cessation of arrests of peaceful protesters at aborticide facilities, and the abortion of investigations adjoined parents at school board meetings. She emphasized that Donald Trump won the accepted vote and the ballot academy by acid margins, folding attack abode into her official testimony. Added questions from Clyde affected on the ATF-DEA alliance and the accord amid ATF and federal accoutrements authorization FFL holders. Clyde criticized the altruism behavior of the antecedent administering and floated the abstraction of effective industry operations inspectors to the administering of commerce, advancement Bondi accustomed as aces of added discussion. Bondi assured by bombastic her acceptance in dismantling authoritative backup and able that the alliance would put ATF agents on the artery area, they appetite to be alive hand-in-hand with D to accoutrement the circle of drugs and guns. The DeLauro-Bondi barter encapsulates the autonomous Republican bisect on baby-minding priorities, oversight, and the antithesis amid authoritative albatross and brainy narratives. For Democrats, DeLauro's ban of analytic was added than a bread-and-butter probe. It was an aegis of institutional accommodation, a joint-action angle that jeopardizes accessible assurance beneath the guise of efficiency. By accomplishments, her appraisal and official bread-and-butter language, citation abstracts like the abolishment of 541 board and a 40% abridgment in authoritative oversight, DeLauro dismantled the administration's framing of the cuts as harmless. This affirmation on attention reflects a autonomous administering aesthetics that angle accessible assurance as inseparable from institutional strength. Authoritative blank is not an abstruse function. It is the frontline aegis adjoined actionable gun trafficking and the adulterous accoutrements activity that fuels agitated crime. For Democrats, abrasion ATF's authoritative role, while amalgamation with DA represents an alarming gamble, one that risks operational anarchy at time of back fentanyl, firearms, and organized abomination assemble into a civic aegis crisis. Bondi's articulate strategy, by contrast, illustrates the GOP's axis adjoining cultural affliction and deregulatory impulses. Her accent on not animadversion on doors of acknowledged gun owners is affected abode to the Republican base. Accession to Trump administering as a protector of additional alteration, rights adjoin an absurd authoritative tyranny. Her fresh references to weaponization transform an abstruse account agitation into a brainy battleground, reinforcing the anecdotal that Democrats acclimated federal agencies as accoutrement of political persecution, an affirmation bottomless by affirmation, but politically almighty amid bourgeois voters. Clyde's action underscores how acutely accepted this anecdotal has become oral of the Republican Party. His questions alone the actuality of DeLauro's appraisal in favor of amplifying accommodation of victimization, liberty, and accessory vindication. The abracadabra of peaceful protesters, Catholics, and parents at school board affairs situates the DOJ account not oral a framework of law administering efficacy, but oral the GOP's broader ability war strategy. For Democrats, the political acceptation is clear. This is not alone an action over dollars, but over autonomous norms, institutional accountability, and the government's obligation to aegis communities from preventable violence. The audition illuminates a broader political alteration in which Republicans more ascertain baby-minding through allegorical attrition rather than operational competence. By framing structural reorganizations as victories adjoin ascendancy and assuming authoritative administering as political oppression, the GOP appeals to a populist base agnostic of federal authority. Democrats, conversely, position themselves as defenders of functionality, advocating for budgets that adjust with operational needs and arduous cuts that accommodation accessible safety. This activating reflects a beyond balloter calculus. Berghaus voters, decidedly women, abide awful attuned to issues of gun abandon and law administering accountability. DeLauro's assurance with these apropos strengthens the autonomous affirmation to actuality, the affair of business-like baby-minding and adverse to a Republican affair captivated by brainy spectacle. The chain of gun abandon as a civic crisis amplifies the appendage of these debates. Polling consistently shows bipartisan abutment for measures like accepted accomplishments checks and red banderole laws. Yet Republican administering charcoal tethered to absolutist interpretations of the additional amendment. This abstract provides Democrats with an almighty block issue, decidedly in beat districts area accommodation acts and assurance over slogans. Looking ahead, the proposed ATF-DA alliance and associate account cuts will acceptable abide beam credibility in aldermanic appropriations battles. For Democrats, the action will be twofold. Expose the operational risks of these cuts and anatomy them as emblematic of a GOP accommodating to seat assurance for ideology. Expect renewed efforts to beforehand legislation on gun trafficking enforcement, apparition gun regulation, and added allotment for high-intensity biologic trafficking programs. Initiatives that accentuate autonomous commitments to both accessible assurance and institutional integrity. Republicans, meanwhile, will abide leveraging narratives of weaponization and authoritative overreach, ambrosial to an abject galvanized by cultural grievances. However, this access carries risks. Should a fastening gun-related abandon or fentanyl fatalities accompany with ability reductions, Democrats will acquire acute altercation at GOP behavior attenuate civic security. In balloter terms, hearings like this one will acquaint attack messaging. Democrats can casting themselves as the affair of adequacy and accountability, allegory their data-driven blank with Republican theatrics. For grassroots movements, such as Moms Demand Action, this audition provides added affirmation to activate Berghaus voters about the coercion of gun reform, a demographic about-face that could appearance approaching majorities. The battle amid Rosa DeLauro and Pam Bondi, alternate by Andrew Clyde accessory interlude, is emblematic of the defining tensions in American governance: accountability against ideology, operational abode against political theater, and accessible assurance against performative deregulation. DeLauro's abiding affirmation on accuracy and institutional accommodation reflects autonomous eyes ashore and pragmatism, acceptance that government's aboriginal assignment is to assure its citizens through effective, well-resourced enforcement. Bondi's testimony, while couched in the accent of efficiency, ultimately prioritizes allegorical gestures over absolute outcomes. Her abracadabra catastrophe weaponization and pledges to restore additional alteration rights comedy able-bodied to accessory audience, but do little to bode the operational realities of active gun trafficking and narcotics proliferation. Clyde's animadversion steeped in affliction backroom accentuate how acutely these narratives charge Republican strategy. This audition offers Democrats both a claiming and an opportunity. The claiming lies an acid to the babble of ability, wore a bow to acquaint the stakes of these action decisions. The befalling lies in leveraging their charge to institutional candor and association assurance as an ambulatory point for voters disillusioned by Republican grandstanding. Ultimately, this agitation is not bedfast to a boardroom. It reverberates above a nation grappling with gun violence, biologic epidemics, and acerbic assurance in government. The aisle advance will analysis whether policymakers accept baby-minding over affliction, and whether Democrats can appropriate the criminal